Most of us are back. Item number 11, board priorities, budget update, and district engagement processes.
Okay. In service to our goal of developing a budget that reflects district priorities and really honors the voices from our community, we've launched, as was described on the July 20th workshop, a budget engagement process. So we're here to provide you more details on our progress, as well as discuss the learning continuity and attendance plan, the development of this plan, and how the development of this plan really intersects with our budget engagement process, as well as previous engagement efforts that have gone on throughout the year. So I'm happy to introduce Renee Arcus, Robert Tagorda, and Lucy Salazar.
Thank you. So some of the outcomes we're going to go over today are listed on the slide. We're going to have a small budget update. We've been keeping you guys pretty updated with some information. We also have a piece of talking about the budget engagement process update, some information on our learning continuity and attendance plan development, and then we'll leave some time for discussion. So I have a couple slides here to talk about the budget update and where we are in the budget and financial reporting process. This little slide is my go-to slide to talk about where we are in budget development because it's such a year-long process. It involves 4 different pieces that are consistently overlapping and going on all year long, starting with the budget, interim reporting, our final closing of our year, and the audit report that kind of brings it all together at the end of the year. Right around this time, coincidentally, it aligns with the opening of school. We're actually touching all 4 activities. So currently, we're in the August-September timeframe. We're awaiting some information from the state and federal governments regarding some updates to our budget. We're trying to close the books. We're helping the auditors who've been here since February. And we are, believe it or not, as part of the budget engagement process, already working on the development and talking about our next year's budget. So very little update on the closing process. We are finalizing our numbers now. These numbers will include all the revenue and expenditures that we've incurred throughout the year in 1920. That includes the COVID-related expenses that we incurred starting on March 13th, 2020. This particular time provides us with a great opportunity to kind of look forward, to see what information we have that's closed out the year, and kind of look towards what changes we may need to incorporate into our future budgets. We're knee-deep in the auditing process, and all of that information will be brought in December, but in just a few short weeks on September 16th board meeting, we'll be bringing you our 1920 final numbers. What we're really waiting on now is Congress, if I can be honest. Congress just recessed without a new COVID-19 relief package. So what that means for us is we're waiting to find out what kind of changes that the federal government may bring to our numbers. And one of the big pieces is, in the state budget, there's an allowance if the federal government does come through with additional funding by October 15th, we might get a little bit of relief from the cash deferrals I talked about last time. If you recall, the cash deferrals are great. 25 to 30% of our budget in cash is being deferred into the next year. With any federal relief, we may be able to reduce those to about half. So again, we're in a little bit of a waiting pattern and hoping to hear good news from our federal and state budgets.
What is a cash deferral?
What that means is for this year in 2021, the governor has provided us with a budget that's fully funded minus our COLA for this year. So if you recall, back in May, we discussed a 10% reduction. That was removed, but when they removed it, they are now not giving us cash for about 25% of the revenue that they guaranteed us. So picture it like a paycheck that your employer says, we're going to give you this much money, but I'm only going to be able to give you about 75% of it in cash, and I'll get you on the next one. For us, the next one is 21-22. So I'm going to invite Lucy up to continue our discussion regarding the budget engagement framework and give you a little bit more information about where we're headed.
Thank you. I'm just gonna. Did I move too quickly? I did. Okay, that's okay. So thank you, Renee. Good afternoon, board members, executive staff. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be back and be able to share with you some progress and some updates on our efforts to engage the community on the topic specifically around the budget. So during our last presentation on July 20th, our team had proposed an engagement framework, an engagement process framework, which you see, I brought the slide back. Many of you on the board had an opportunity to share some great feedback, and it's given us some actionable next steps to consider, so we want to thank you. Because as we move along in this process, we want to take any feedback that we receive into consideration as we continuously plan. So I'm here to share with you a few things. I'm here to share with you, to review the engagement process, the framework that we are operating through, but additionally just share with you some updates about the process and what we've been engaging in. So what you have on the slide here is the engagement framework, and we shared it, like I said, on July 20th. And there's been a few things that have happened since we were here. Again, we really anticipate and we really hope that board members will engage with us in a discussion. We really seek feedback today about what we have done, what else can we do, and I'll share with you some of the guiding questions that we will be engaging in the community with. So as we face these challenging times, we need to be able to engage as many people as possible, and as many stakeholder groups, as many individuals, and as far wide as we possibly can here in Long Beach. The engagement framework has set out to cultivate, to maintain, to grow collaborative relationships with our community members, but also, again, we can't forget individuals. Not everyone belongs to a stakeholder group, but everyone's voice is important, and we really feel that in our framework, we are trying to capture as many data points, if you will, as many opportunities for input as possible in our LBUSD community. So we are aiming through this framework to have two goals met. One is to inform some short-term goals as we are facing COVID challenges as we reopen schools and as schools begin. But we are also looking long-term, and we're also looking for input through this engagement process for some long-term strategic planning. So in the framework, we've provided spaces and opportunities to gather feedback. And as you can tell, there's three different input opportunities. We have individuals, an opportunity for individuals to provide input through the thought exchange, and you'll hear a little bit more of other opportunities that we've designed for our individuals in the Long Beach community. We also have input through our community forums and our district and community stakeholder groups, and those are two very distinct opportunities in our community. One is really specific. If you think of our district and community stakeholder groups that we have historically engaged with, a few that come to mind would be our CAC, Special Ed Parent Forum. We also have our Coalition of Informed and African American Parents. They are also a standing stakeholder group in our district. So those would be what we would consider district and or community stakeholder groups. But we know, again, that not everyone in our LBUSD community belongs to one of these particular or specific stakeholder groups. And so for that, we've also engaged we are designing community forums for anyone to attend virtually. Again, these are all virtually as of now. Our hope is that eventually we can meet face-to-face and get to know each other in an even better capacity. So with these efforts, again, we have three different ways to provide input on a variety of topics, and they are all leading toward the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. This committee will serve for Dr. Baker to be, again, in an advisory role. They will take into account the feedback we are receiving, that we are gathering throughout this process, so that Dr. Baker and her advisory committee can take a look at the feedback, analyze it, discuss it, and eventually and essentially come up with some recommendations for the board and for herself to consider as we move forward. So we've launched our process. with our community, and we're glad to report that we've already met virtually with the Superintendent Advisory Committee. As you remember, on July 20th, we said that this process will start and end with the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. And so we did have the opportunity to meet virtually with 20 of our 24 intended members. We were very excited to meet with them, and they are an amazing, dedicated group, not only of parents, but also community members. Oh, okay, this one. Let's try this one. I apologize. Okay. So just to remind us of who is on the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, I wanted to share, again, how much we appreciate the interest, the willingness of the members to join and join in on the work with Dr. Baker on behalf of all students, with their first topic, again, being the budget. This advisory committee will be a standing committee. Right now, the topic of, that we started with is the budget, but it will be an ongoing advisory committee. So this working group is aimed at, to assist, to collaborate with Dr. Baker in the analysis of community feedback and formulate some recommendations with all stakeholders in mind. So during our initial meeting, we were able to gather some initial feedback on what we intend to and what we set out to do. Again, we have some guiding questions throughout this budget engagement process. We are asking the community through our thought exchange. We are asking our community through our community forums, through our specific stakeholder groups, and we're asking the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. So what are some practices that would be most effective in addressing 3 different concerns? Again, where did we get these concerns? We came to these concerns from information that we've already received through some ongoing engagement opportunities that Robert had shared at the last meeting. And they are specifically academic supports, social and emotional learning, and student engagement and motivation. Those 3 big topics are what we are engaging around with the budget. So our advisory committee members were very gracious, and they shared with us their thoughts, and we listened. They shared their concerns with the use of thought exchange, and we're bringing that to you today, sharing with you that they were very unfamiliar with this mode of surveying. So they shared with us their concerns around the thought exchange. They shared with us their concerns with how are we connecting with those that we have not had a chance to connect with. They also expressed appreciation for convening this committee. So it was a lot of great feedback and a lot of great conversation around thank you for having us, but we have a lot of work to do. So again, I just want to thank all the members that attended this virtual session because they allowed us to share in very vulnerable ways the work that we're engaging in, and we just really appreciate that. So we intend to meet again with our Superintendent Advisory Committee mid-September, and we're striving for 100% attendance. So we look forward to sharing with you the outcomes and the progress that we are making with this very important group. So again, this slide, I'm not going to read it to you because it's available, but again, we have 24 of our community stakeholder groups who are invited, and again, we want 100% attendance for our next one. Let me share with you a little bit about what progress we have made, what has transpired since we were last here on July 20th. We have our timeline that we shared with you, and we're glad to see some bold. We're glad to see some green check marks. Again, this is not a checklist, but it's more intended to just share with you what are we engaging in, what have we done, and what we have left to do. So on our timeline that we shared, we have some updates, and again, all our updates reflect action that's being taken based on feedback. So some of the items, for example, to be specific, when we engaged with the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, again, they shared with us their concern, well, what is this thought exchange? I'm not too familiar. And in reflection and looking back and debriefing, we realized that we missed an opportunity to add the word survey, because thought exchange is the name of the partner business agent that we are using for this survey, but it's a survey, and so we are making we made the change to include the word survey, so it's not confusing to our community, and it's something that whichever way you translate it, it's familiar. It's a survey. That was one of the items, but again, we wanted to also share that on this timeline, So that, the thought exchange was mentioned earlier today. It was deployed on Monday. It was yesterday in the mid-afternoon. And I'm happy to say that we've had already over 300 thought exchange thoughts presented and are being rated. And so if you are in the public and you are watching this today, we encourage you to visit our website and add your thoughts about the budget, particularly around those three areas: academic support, social emotional learning, student motivation, and engagement. We have already planned and scheduled 3 of our stakeholder groups. We have, for our DLAC, we are meeting on August 25th virtually at 1 o'clock. And then August 27th, we will be meeting with DCAC. Again, 2 very important community stakeholder groups, district stakeholder groups, and we will be meeting with them at the end of August. October 14th, Dr. Simon has invited us to present for our CAC community group, and so we're very excited to come present to them and engage them in the budget. And also, I'm very excited to share with you that as a result of our Student Advisory Committee, again, going to that concern that they express, how do we reach those that we haven't reached yet? What are some traditional ways that we can, what's wrong with traditional communicating, modes of communication? And so through Robert's office, he so graciously, using Google Voice, we will be launching and advertising this hotline for the budget engagement. And there will be a message going out to our families through School Messenger and the such, so that everyone knows that there's a hotline that they can call and they can give their voice. Namely because some of the concerns we heard was not everyone wants to type, not everybody wants to write in, not everybody wants to leave the safety of their homes during these times, and so we are offering this hotline so that anyone who is interested can do so. It will not be I'm sorry, I see you, Board Member Kerr, go ahead.
You might answer my question though.
Oh,
If you
okay.
finish,
So it's
then
not a live, yes, so it's not like a hotline, like, hi, how can I help you? It will be a pre-recorded message saying this is the budget engagement hotline. Thank you for calling. Here are the 3 topics that we are looking for your feedback on. Again, academic supports, social emotional learning, student engagement and participation. And they would be able to leave their message. There is someone dedicated to transcribe all the messages in any language. We have the capacity for Khmer, for Spanish, of course English, and any other language that we might have. Yes.
So that was my question is, so people can leave their responses in the language that they're most comfortable?
Absolutely.
So Khmer, Spanish, Tagalog,
Yes.
and then we will translate it. So in the intro message, will there be a short part in English, but also in our, possibly those 3 additional languages?
Yes.
Just a welcome and telling them and they can leave it in their native tongue?
Yes,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. That's a really good question. And again, that is just an example of how we are responding to some of the feedback we're receiving through this process. Mid-September, like I mentioned, we are holding community forums virtually. And one of the things that we've also added is this need to meet with the Superintendent Advisory Committee midpoint in the process, so that we can, like a dipstick, like what is the feedback we're receiving, what is the input from the community, what are some things we need to start considering now, or what do we need to hold off and wait for more feedback around. So we just want to be very conscientious and mindful of feedback is going to come in quickly and kind of in a rush, and so we don't want to wait till the end of a process. We want to, at some point, stop, pause, and process some of the feedback. Lastly, we are anticipating that around mid-November, we will be able to convene again, kind of in a final kind of way, the Superintendent Advisory Committee, so that we can then, at that time in the process, take a look at all the feedback and create some and develop some recommendations for implementation around the budget. As Renee had mentioned, they're already planning budgets in the future, and so it's really, really important. So one of the things you might notice on this slide that wasn't on the last slide are some asterisks. And so these asterisks are, they relate to the learning continuity and attendance plan. And so I want to bring Robert up, and I want to introduce Robert, because he's going to share with you a little bit around the development. But I wanted to pause and see if there's any other questions you might have of the process so far before we bring Robert up. Okay, I'm going to come back at the end and ask you again. Okay? All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. I wanted to start out this discussion about the learning continuity and attendance plan by invoking the timeline for the learning continuity plan. And the reason why I wanted to do that was because Lucy left off with the timeline for the budget engagement process. And we really wanted to emphasize to the board and to the members of the community that it's an integrated process. When you see the budget engagement process and timeline, you are also seeing the timeline for the learning continuity plan. And it is intentional on our part to do it that way because we don't want stakeholders to feel frustrated that there are many different ways that they can get confused and lost as it relates to providing feedback on matters that are really important to the community. So whether it relates to academics, to the budget engagement process, to the learning continuity plan specifically, the LCAP once that process commences again in the spring, we're all collecting this information and it's all informing the same process. So as it relates to the learning continuity plan, you can break it down into 5 different phases. The first is when the state released the details of the plan requirements. So they made this announcement in July, but the template itself was not made available in its final format until August 1. So then from that point to this point, we've been processing what this means for us in terms of the plan development and seeing how we can integrate it within the rest of the processes we already have in place in the district. Then the second is actually integrating the process of the learning continuity plan alongside the budget engagement process. So we, as Lucy mentioned, intricately connected the Superintendent's Advisory Committee meeting to the learning continuity plan process so that the feedback we receive from that committee can inform the contents of the plan that you're going to see. Similarly, the Thought Exchange Survey launch, which occurred yesterday, is also connected with the main themes of what the learning continuity plan is supposed to be addressing on behalf of the district. And even the feedback that was given to us by members of the advisory committee saying, why don't you set up a phone line so that people who are more comfortable leaving a voice message for the district can be part of this process. It actually is also a very specific part of the learning continuity plan in which the district is asked what are various methods you're employing to try to reach out to those who have very limited technology access. So we're really thankful to members of this advisory committee for giving us feedback that we were able to act on immediately and be able to launch later this week. So then the third phase of this plan is going to occur at the end of the week, which is releasing the actual draft of the learning continuity plan. It will be in draft form, meaning that stakeholders can continue to provide us with feedback as they see it, and we can continue to fine-tune it until it reaches the board and is adopted by all of you. The fourth phase gets us to next week, and you'll see it here under August 25 and 27, which is when we engage in formal consultation with the 2 groups that are specifically mentioned in the Senate bill that governs the Learning Continuity Plan, which would be our District English Learner Advisory Committee and the District Community Advisory Committee. So they are the 2 that we are required to formally engage with and consult as it relates to the Learning Continuity Plan. And it is a similar requirement that we have with the LCAP. This does not preclude the district, however, from engaging other stakeholder groups and other members of the community, which is why, as Lucy mentioned, we've also set up other community forums in order to ensure that any member, whether you're part of DLAC, DCAC, or any other group, can participate and voice whatever their ideas might be to inform the process. But we wanted to make sure we specifically highlighted DLAC and DCAC in this timeline because it is a requirement of the district to do that for the learning continuity plan. And then the last phase gets us to September. Here you'll see it under September 2, September 16, and September 30. That last phase is engagement with the board. So at that point, on September 2, we're required to have a public hearing in which members of the community can provide feedback to the board on the contents of this learning continuity plan. At that point, we'll get the feedback, fine-tune the plan, and then provide it to the board again 2 weeks later for board adoption on September 16. The reason why we have to have separate meetings for the public hearing and the board adoption is, again, because it's required by Ed Code for us to do it that way. It is in alignment and in keeping with the requirements of the LCAP. So the state has really tried to emulate the process for the LCAP as it relates to the Learning Continuity Plan. The only difference is that while we normally would have an entire semester to engage in LCAP work, we only have about 2.5 months to do it with the Learning Continuity Plan. Now, having said that, when we look at the actual requirements of the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, you'll notice that just by the look of it, it's very similar to the LCAP. But it isn't, it is a state requirement that we're required to fulfill, but it is an extension of a local plan that we develop here in the district. So we really wanted to make sure that we emphasize this point because what the state requires us to do is one thing, but we have our own local plan as it relates to school opening and safety that is a reflection of our own values here at Long Beach Unified and can be adapted and changed as is needed by our district in order to meet the needs that confront us. And of course, agility is a really important thing right now for any organization, given how rapidly the pandemic is progressing and the responses that we're required to put together. So you should note that while this is a requirement for us to submit to the County Office of Education by September 30, it doesn't mean that it can't be revised because we have our own local plan that we can utilize in order to make those adjustments. And similarly, when it relates to stakeholder engagement, many members of our community expressed concern about the aggressive timeline that the California Department of Education had put us in as it relates to the Learning Continuity Plan. And it's understandable, right? Many people feel that how can you put a plan like this together that is so important and crucial within such a short amount of time? And the message we've been trying to convey to members of the community is that this whole process has been taking place now for over the past half year, and aggressively so over the past couple of months. You might recall this slide from our July 20 board workshop in which we detailed the LCAP thought exchange that we put together in February, the K-12 distance and home learning survey, the LBUSD family needs survey, which attracted another several thousand survey responses. Altogether, just these three pieces alone provided us with over 45,000 survey responses that we're utilizing to try to craft a response to the Learning Continuity Plan. And it informs the work that we're doing as a school district so that we're not really starting from scratch in terms of stakeholder engagement. We're actually building upon what the district has already been doing over the past half year. And then, in fact, you might recall as well the guiding questions that we had posed to the board that effectively synthesizes the main themes that have emerged from these surveys. It is also the same guiding questions that our Superintendent Advisory Committee began to discuss at their opening meeting last week. It's the same guiding questions that will govern the community forums that we'll schedule for later in the month. It's the same guiding questions we'll pose to DCAC and DLAC when we meet with them. We're all trying to address the same critical concerns, and it informs the process for the Learning Continuity Plan because at the end of it, the crux of that plan is really addressing these three things. What are we doing as a district as it relates to academic supports for kids? What are we doing as a district as it relates to social emotional learning? What are we doing as a district as it relates to student engagement and motivation? Of course, with an umbrella, overarching question about health and safety, not just for our students, but for all parties involved. So those are the really critical foundations upon which we're building this plan. And it's the same questions we've been grappling with as a school system for the past several months as we've been dealing with the pandemic. And so I'd like to leave the board with 2 more slides before I turn it over to Renee. But in these two slides, I wanted to call out the recently released 2020-2021 School Opening and Safety Plan. This is now available on lbschools.net. And you can see the table of contents on the right. There you'll find that the main chapters of this plan relate to health and safety protocols, COVID-19 testing and reporting, facility cleaning and sanitation protocols, instructional programs, special education and mental health, athletics and extracurricular activities. These are the same requirements that we have for the learning continuity plan. And in fact, when parents ask me about the contents of that learning continuity plan, I refer them to this document and say, what you will find in the learning continuity plan is already here in this document that is actually more parent-friendly and adaptable to the needs of the district, so that the learning continuity plan will reflect largely what is already in this plan that parents and others have already been viewing. And then just to summarize, these are the components for the learning continuity plan. And again, it's similar in structure to our own local plan here at Long Beach Unified. It's going to ask us about stakeholder engagement, continuity of learning, social emotional learning, pupil and family engagement and outreach, school nutrition, and what we are specifically doing for vulnerable groups in our community. So again, the same themes, the same ideas. We want to build upon the plan that we already have in the district and then fine-tune it to meet the needs of the learning continuity plan. But it is a reflection of an aligned effort that we have here at Long Beach Unified that I think is making it a very robust process for our stakeholders. At this time, I'd like to turn it over now to Renee, but if you have any questions about the learning continuity plan, I'm happy to address them now or later when Lucy engages us in further dialogue.
I think do we have a question now?
You know what, actually let them finish, because I have a feeling they may answer some of these, so they're very thorough, so.
So you're nearing the end. Hopefully we'll get a couple more questions answered and then we'll go from there. So the last slide we want to talk to you about kind of brings it together from the fiscal aspect. We started with budget. We're kind of ending with budget regarding the learning continuity and planned spending. In no particular order is a partial list of the expenditures that will be included in the learning continuity and attendance plan. So just to highlight some of the things that many of you know have been going on for several months. There's some learning loss summer programs that we've instituted, some technology. What comes to mind is the hotspots and the Chromebooks that have all been sent out. Our learning management system, there's TOSAs which is teachers on special assignments that are being brought in to help with this process. We have a ton of professional development. I think we spent a little bit of time last time talking about we've spent some time on professional development with our administrators, and coming up right now, we're doing a training of the trainers, and next week we'll spend a lot of time with our teachers on the professional development related to many of the things that are included in this plan. Middle school intervention classes, we're maintaining those in the new system. School nutrition is a large piece of the puzzle. This is just funding our efforts to provide as many nutritious meals to our students as possible. It's a very difficult situation. I was talking with other districts this morning that are finding the same kind of, percentage of students showing up for meals, and our efforts to include those nutritious meals are just as important, I feel, as some of the academics that we're including with this plan. We've got counseling and nursing support. Distance learning supplies. What comes to mind is some art materials, some things that we're going to realize that we need to provide students so that regardless of where they are, they can, they can be part of the classroom and have the materials that they need to do these things. We have some personal protective equipment for schools, and definitely some social emotional learning supports in the form, many different types of forms. I think Aaron's talked a little bit about what we're providing for students in that arena. All of those things and much, much more will be included in this plan. And it is our hope that we can, align these things with the budget so that we can report back to our community what we're doing and the way that we're doing it within our budget process as well.
I
So
have a
with
quick
that,
question.
are there
Actually,
questions regarding this?
On the professional development one, that's for teachers. Will the teacher librarians be included in that? Do we know?
So Dr. Kell is answering,
Oh,
but yes,
okay.
the teacher librarians are included in that training.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to clarify, the professional development for the teachers will be online. They will not be meeting in person. I'm just clarifying. Thank you.
So that's also a yes from Dr. Kell.
Do we have any other questions, or?
I do, and I'll try to not jump around too much since I have Renee captive up there. I'll start with the numbers. How long is, just out of curiosity, the learning continuity and attendance plan template, how long is it? Like how many pages?
It will depend on how much we write into the particular plan. I think it starts out, and maybe Robert wants to address this part of it. You know how big it starts out?
Right now, we're at about 35 pages.
Okay.
So it won't be as long as the LCAP, but it will be pretty substantial.
Okay. And I appreciate all of the work and the thoughtfulness, and there's lots of, it looks like, opportunities for engagement. And I think the thing that Lucy said at the beginning is this is about short-term goals that have to do with the learning continuity plan as well as long-term goals for budgeting into the next year. So I was glad to see that we're including, or at least considering, the thought exchange messages from earlier in the year. I know that was pre-COVID and we talk about it as a different time, but when I look at the things on the back in terms of nutrition, interventions, tutoring, those are all things that have been consistently important to our stakeholders. So it will be interesting to see what is the same and what has intensified. Mental health, social, emotional well-being, those were things I heard a lot in the early spring. In terms of the DCAC, Renee's there for the budget. We hear the word budget, and we know on the grand scale that Long Beach Unified has an immense budget. It's almost $1 billion, correct?
That is correct.
But when we're talking about budget in this respect, some of that money is specific to CARES money that we're spending for COVID, but some of that money is money that we use for supports within the district on an ongoing basis. Could you or Yumi speak to what a ballpark dollar amount, because it isn't all $950 billion that when we talk about, we're going to talk about the budget, we get to talk about $950 billion. So when we talk about engaging around budget, what part of the budget are we looking for specific engagement about? And what is that standing cost of personnel that takes up most of that? So just for perspective.
Right. For a little bit of perspective, we have a $950 million budget. When we talk about things that we've discussed in the past, including like the LCAP, where we've had a lot of things that aren't necessarily the ground that you're talking about, the base that we need to operate our school district, that's running about $120 million. That's been the range of the LCAP, and the thing that we like to call that maybe the icing on the cake. So a lot of what that $950 million goes for is to keep the doors open, to keep the students in classrooms, to keep the teachers where we need to be. And that's not exactly what's going to be represented in the learning continuity plan. What we have with that is all of the things that we may be utilizing, because as you can imagine, we are doing a lot of different things to bring in a lot of different resources that we've had that we're going to use completely differently, resources that I'll say we didn't know that we had that we can turn towards this event. And so the learning continuity plan will be kind of a different figure in talking about all of the things that we can bring forth for this effort, but it will not represent the budget as a whole.
Okay. Yes, so that's helpful. In terms of community engagement, the DLAC committee and DCAC committees, which are going to meet, we know that those are required, and we have representatives from each school site on those committees. Our guests eligible to sit in on those calls. I know when they do voting that it is really structured per ed code, but is that something that if a community member wanted to listen into those conversations would be open?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We welcome that. If it comes down to it and there has to be a vote, we have to go by the bylaws of those committees, in which case we would have to go with the official members of the committee, but anyone can chime in and provide us with feedback.
Okay. In terms of the September 16th of the adoption, the learning continuity plan, does it by law have to be at a regularly scheduled board meeting? Does that adoption have to take place? I know sometimes when we adopt things, it has to be done at a regularly scheduled board meeting. It can't be done at a special board meeting. I just wanted to know if there was a requirement around that.
We'll have to look it up.
Okay.
But right now, what we did with the timeline was we tried to merge it with what we already had scheduled. The bottom line is that we have to fulfill the deadline of September 30, submission to Lake.
Okay, I think that's all I have for now.
So, excuse me. So as promised, I said I'd come back because one of the, our goals for today, as I wait, we wanted to hear from everyone here because we have 3 guiding questions that we're trying to engage the community with, and all of you are part of our community, particularly the board members. And so we are hopeful that ideas might be swirling. What might that look like? What might effective practices to help support to effectively address academic supports, to effectively address student social emotional learning, to effectively address student engagement and motivation. And while you may not have had enough time to think about that, we really want you to know that everyone here in their particular departments, and I know in being able to join elementary administrator meetings, and getting to know that later in or right after us in the agenda today, there will be a conversation around looking at data as it relates to a particular group of our students and their social emotional learning. So I'll just kind of leave it open for you to see if there's any, yes, please, thank you.
Sorry, I did have one more question.
Sure.
In terms of the families that might utilize the hotline because they feel more comfortable that way, is it possible to have something posted at the school sites in multiple languages that give them that phone number? So as families are going either to pick up supplies or pick up books, I know most of that stuff is already printed by the school site, so they might not have the opportunity to print something, but at least if we had it posted in places where families and parents go, that if they want to give information, that we've got some signage around what that phone number would be as families return to sites to pick up supplies.
Well, it seems to me that when we had an opportunity to visit the duplicating services branch, that we have an in-house graphic designer with Natalie. And as we've been to different places around the district, we see her artwork. So maybe it's something, an assignment that we could, or a challenge for Natalie to come up with something that can be at the school sites as people are picking up food, that type of thing.
Right.
That's a great idea, thank you. And Natalie is very talented. I've had the opportunity to work with her in the past, and so we'll reach out to her and make sure that we post in prominent places at each site the hotline that will be available to all our community. But again, if you have any ideas, if you have any ways, any strategies that are effective in addressing those 3 areas that we are trying to address in this engagement process, we welcome you. You can email me. Feel free to do so. But if there's any
I have
other...
some ideas.
Oh, yes, Dr. Benitez. I hear you.
So I love the suggestion about physically posting up the hotline number. I wanted to share a couple of ideas, and then one thing from our previous meeting that I did share. I'm hearing a lot from parents that they're not receiving the information, and I can verify that for the last 2 communications that went out for our district, some of them I received via email, some of them via text, some call, but I'm not seeing a consistency of receiving all 3. So I'm wondering if that's a glitch in our system, or if some things are only going out via email. So to give you the most recent example, the Thought Exchange survey that went out on Friday, I received an email and a text, but not a call. And for the previous communication that went out, I received an email, but not a text or a call. And then for 2 communications ago, I received a call, but not a text or not an email. So I wanted to bring that to the team's attention, and I'm not sure if that's strategic or if there's a glitch in our systems as to why certain things are not going out in all 3 ways. The thought I had was around the community engagement. Actually, 2 thoughts on community engagement, just to try to help our team sort of figure out, right, how to maximize our community engagement. One of the things that I'm hearing from parents, particularly non-native English-speaking parents, is that sometimes they will receive the information, but not sure what to do with the information in terms of feedback, involvement, input, and then not sure sort of how that information then informs our decision-making. So as an example, some parents did, receive the thought exchange survey, but then weren't sure, obviously because they're not able to hear in on the presentation this morning on the board workshop. They're just not sure, okay, so what is this for? What is this going to be used for? Sort of how is this connected to what this academic year will look like? So there's that piece that even though we can send information out, that oftentimes what I'm hearing from parents is they're just not sure what this is, right? So if it is a survey, why is this survey important for me right now? What is it going to impact? And again, if there's confusion, I'm not blaming it on our district or on staff. It's because even right now, listening to Robert's explanation of the connection between the LCAP and the continuity plan, even that's not, as clear. So I think just clarifying what the specific purpose of that communication is would help. I think in relation to that, my more concrete suggestion is working with our community partners that do have some in-person contact with families and or parents that may have accessibility challenges and or language barriers and or communications gaps. As an example, I can think of 3 partners right now on the ground floor that are doing some in-person activities. Long Beach Forward, for example, the last couple of weekends has been dropping off information regarding the US Census. Could we partner with them where when they're doing their drop-off, they could also drop off like a 3x5 or a hanger with our district information on it, right? Which would include the hotline and or like the most recent update. There's groups like Habitat for Humanity in my district, and Downtown Associated Youth Services are still doing like meal distribution and sort of distribution of school supplies, gift cards. Is there again a hanger or something that we could provide to them physically while they're handing out their things that they could also be handing out district updates or the hotline or whatever the latest information is. So that's sort of one concrete suggestion that I think if we can print out some hard copies of things, and it doesn't have to be like a booklet or a packet, but just sort of like a reference, like here are the 3 entry points or the 2 entry points or the link, right, in Spanish and compliant English, that would help for those folks that for whatever reason aren't receiving the texts, the emails, or the phone calls. So I would suggest that for the public engagement. And then the last thing is, I still would love to see more spaces, formal spaces for student voices. I know it's hard to do that in person right now, but some kind of student-led group. I brought this up again a couple months ago. That could be student-centered, student-led. Again, that highlights the student voice, where we could have student representatives in some of the other spaces, but this would be exclusively a student-led space where we could lift up student voices around some of the same issues that we're talking about. So those are my thoughts. Thank you, Lucy, for the very big overview of all the community engagement stuff that we're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. I appreciate your suggestions. I'm taking notes. You've come up with a great idea about the hanger, some print material. That would be one way that we could reach to those that we have not been able to reach so far.
Especially because many community organizations are doing their census canvassing.
There's
So
a
if
lot
we
of
could
walking
just
around, yes.
Add that, right, yeah.
But one of the things you mentioned, specifically student-led, I know that Dr. Baker also has formed and is in the process of meeting with her student advisory committee as well, Superintendent's student advisory committee. And so we hope to engage them as well. And they are one of our community stakeholders or district stakeholders that we plan to meet with as well. And so they're meeting in October. So I didn't give you all the dates because some of the dates, as you can imagine, some of our district community stakeholders aren't meeting until October. For example, Superintendent's Parent Forum is not until October. So some of those, and we have to get on their agenda. So, but thank you for the suggestions. Any other?
Thank you, Dr. Salazar. I know you and I talked last week when I was in about partnering with those groups in terms of doing potentially, not necessarily an open call, but really calling in some of the leadership of our community partners that are doing work, whether they're downtown or uptown, Success and Challenges, Latinas in Action, and asking them what they're hearing, and then giving them the information to disseminate as they're working with their families and with the folks they're working for. That may be a leadership call for those community groups that are external to the district, so not necessarily our internal stakeholder groups, but some of those external groups that we have strong partnerships with and ones who want to be strong partners with us, might be helpful just as a way to touch base with their leadership and see what their ideas for things that they could potentially do on our behalf with their communities.
Thank you. Yes, we talked about holding listening sessions with some of our community groups, and I welcome that idea, and we'll get something on the calendar, something virtual, to be mindful of everyone's health and safety.
Right, I was thinking that because kids aren't in school yet. Like, I think some of them are still relishing
Yeah,
that there's
some of
2
them
more
still
weeks
have some
before they have to
time.
think about it. I know my daughter is.
Okay, well, I thank you for the time. I thank you for being engaged as much as you could be after lunch. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So any more questions or any other? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that report. Our next agenda.
I just wanted to,
Oh,
as we close that, just first of all, thank you to the group that has done the presentation today. That reflects a lot of work that has happened in a short period of time. And I also just wanted to share a couple of things. One is, for those in the public, if you didn't get the link, or if you're just watching from the public and you want to download the 2020-21 school opening and safety plan, it is on the front page of our district website. And also at the request of the board, we are running hard copies to drop off at public locations, and also to give you to put in your constituent areas where you think people would like to access them in hard copy. They're in 3 languages right now, in Khmer, Spanish, and English. And then lastly, just wanted to take off from the questions that you heard, the guiding questions being asked around academic support, social emotional learning, student engagement, and motivation. And so those are very important questions to the work that we do, and you're going to hear a lot about efforts tomorrow relative to students. But I also want to just share that we aren't waiting to activate on these aspects of our work. The data that's coming in and that has come in from previous engagement opportunities will be used to do things like assign the types of roles and responsibilities that staff who are not assigned to a classroom will engage in once school opens back up. So I heard it mention teacher librarians, or teachers on special assignment, or counselors who may not have a class assigned to them. We will be looking at this data to make decisions about what folks do while they are not in a classroom. We have instructional aides, we have recreation aides. We have a lot of people employed in our district that are not directly assigned as a teacher that can help to serve these needs. So this data will be activated upon, even though we're using it also for long term. It will be useful in the next few weeks. I also thought about, Dr. Salazar, the opportunity for a thought exchange specific to students, sent to students' email addresses. We know that students are quick with their technology, and that may be a way to ask the questions specific to them. To Dr. Benitez's point, we have some more in-person student engagement opportunities coming. But that would be a tier one, as we say, to all students that could go out and really reflect the voices and the minds of students, so.
Dr. Baker, quick question. And I may have misheard Robert. Can you clarify if I've heard correctly that he mentioned that the 2021 plan that's accessible and available, or guide, I'm not sure what it's called, opening of schools report, forget what the title is, but the document. He said that everything in the learning continuity plan was available in that format that was more parent-friendly. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, basically the same themes or requirements, the same components that were required to respond to as it relates to the learning continuity plan are effectively addressed in the school opening and safety plan. So for example, it will ask us, what are you doing about learning loss? What are you doing about supporting students who have had social emotional learning struggles? What are you doing about school nutrition? All of the basics as it relates to how a school district will function in the upcoming school year related to learning and attendance is to be addressed by the learning continuity plan and is already addressed by the school opening and safety plan.
Appreciate that, Robert. So what I'm wondering is, what's the incentive then for me as a parent to participate in the learning continuity plan if it's already sort of written up and defined by our plan?
It's a tremendous amount of incentive because there are various services, as Dr. Baker alluded to. There are ideas that are presented to us by stakeholders at times where we can immediately activate upon them, and then we will want to incorporate that into the plan. There are others that are probably more in alignment with a longer-term time horizon to be addressed by budget engagement, maybe even in the LCAP next year, and those are valuable pieces of information for us as well. Some may require additional research on the district's part in order for us to cultivate or develop a program that responds to it, and so we want to make sure that it's captured as well. As it relates to the learning continuity plan, there are various points where stakeholders may say this is something that needs to be elaborated upon because it's unclear to us, and that's also really valuable information. And it could be points of emphasis around how it specifically addresses needs of certain groups of students that are also required of us to address in the learning continuity plan. So a wide range of different uses for us that cover both the requirements, the specific requirements of the learning continuity plan, but as well as other engagement efforts that we have in the district.
And Dr.
Thank you,
Benitez,
Robert.
I'd like to just add on to what Robert said too. As Renee and Yumi started off, our budget is an evolving budget, and it is the kind of plan that requires that we are always updating to meet the needs of the plan. To give you a tangible example, after we published last week the school opening and safety plan, we've already had to make some additions that we will then load up onto the district website based on some new information. Similarly with the budget, when we get new information from the state or from Congress, as Renee reminded us, then there will be updates to the budget. And so the version of plan we're talking about needs to continue to be informed by information and data and the evolution of what's happening at the budget level and at the planning level.
Thank you, Dr. Baker, and that's exactly what I was thinking, like my 2-minute, quote unquote, I know we're not getting in elevators with folks, but sort of that 2-minute sort of pitch that I can make to parents as they're involved. Thank you.
Well, I think, Dr. Baker, just to finish that off, what you were saying earlier about the staff that is not assigned to a classroom, that seems like a direct place that folks can have input to say, within pupil and family engagement, can we do this?
Yes.
And then staff can say, we have staff who can do that. So mental health and social emotional well-being, pupil and family engagement outreach, that is an area where we really want to hear from people about what their ideas are, so that as we're planning to put staff in those positions, we can say that's the direct link.
Right.
Is we heard you say this, so this TOSA will be doing this work to engage families.
Yeah. And I've also heard from you all as a board that you'd like stronger sense of report back on things that are done. Sometimes we activate on something, move ahead with it, and then we forget to come back and say, here's what we did in response to either your constituents, your input, or to survey data. And so that's something we'll be working on as a team.
Yeah, I think that's a recurring theme with a lot of the emails that we've been receiving from parents is that they want more engagement and they want more communication. And I think there are a lot of really wonderful things that we're doing, and we don't always follow through with letting them know about all the wonderful things that are happening. And then also from the parents who were here this morning and parents that we're hearing from, they do want to be engaged, especially with the budget process. They want to know that they're being heard, and they want to know that we are making decisions accordingly, and that they have a voice and not just that they are an afterthought. Okay, do we have any other comments or questions about this presentation? No? Thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
No?
one
So-
last
oh,
group that
okay.
came to mind, actually, someone just texted me because they're watching. Long Beach Homeless Services is also happy to help distribute information, hard copy, as well, Lucy. They just said, hey, count us in, we can help. So shout out to Long Beach Homeless Services.
Very good. I think that's going to help Lucy in her work.